Hello, this is video number 3 of our series installing the Ubuntu server 18.0.4. In this video we will talk about setting up the firewall for the server. Now this is a very important issue for any device, especially for a server. And the way to do that is we will start by steps. The first step is that you disable your server. Now the firewall has been disabled. The next step, you check the status. And as you can see, the status is inactive because we already disabled it. The third thing is that we need to set up the default for this firewall. And to do that is sudo ufw uncomplicated firewall default deny incoming. Now you need to deny all incoming requests to this server. The other step is that you sudo ufw default allow outgoing. Now you will allow all the outgoing connections from this server to the network. Now you need to configure which connections you will allow incoming connections to this server. One of the first things is that you will allow the SSH connections. It's important to allow the SSH because later on when you want to set up your SSL client server certificates, you will need to use this SSH server. Now second thing is sudo ufw allow HTTP. If you allow this, then any incoming request from an HTTP will be allowed. If you add S, now HTTP is port 80. If you add S, then any connection to the server coming from an HTTPS that is port 443 will be allowed. In my case, I'm not going to allow them, but this is for your information. Either HTTPS, which is port 443, or HTTP, which is port 80, you can allow them. In my case, I'm interested in the PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL use port number 543 only. It is the only port that Postgres use, port 5432. Now we need to configure that any connection from outside to a database in the server should pass through this port. But we also need to assign one interface, either the Wi-Fi interface or the LAN interface. Now how can we assign this interface? We need to know this interface. We can get our interface of our server, which is connected through a LAN network, by IP ADDR. As you can see here, our interface network interface is EMP02S25, and our IP address is this one. Now there is one important thing. Up till this moment, this IP address is a dynamic IP address, which means every time this server is connected to the router, the DHCP, the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, will give a different IP address to the server. Every time this server connects to the router, then it will get a new IP address. While the interface network will remain the same. So we need to go to get a static IP address for this server, because the server cannot have multiple and different IP addresses every time the server connects to the router. That's not practical. So we need to change this number and make it a static IP address. It is the same two things, these 192.168, but these two might change. Either we make it a subnet or just we make it an static IP address. So you need to give attention to these two figures, and then this figure if you want to make a subnet, and this figure if you want to make a static IP address. And here is your network interface. Now, coming back again to the Postgres, we need to configure Postgres to use only port 4532 on this network interface. Now, it's worth to mention that in my device, this is the network interface. In your device, this name and number could be obviously different. It could be any, but this is for the Wi-Fi, and this is for the loop, and this is for the LAN network, which is the network interface. So this number could be different in your server. Now, how to configure the Postgres 5432 port to work on this network interface? It is by doing sudo ufw allow in on EMP0S25. This is our network interface to any port 5432. By doing this, we are allowing any connection coming from on port 5432 through this network interface EMP0S25 to connect to this server. Now this rule has been added. Now we need to enable the firewall. Firewall has been enabled. Now we need to check the status of the firewall. As you can see here, port 22, that is the SSH, have been enabled. Port 5432 of Postgres on the interface network EMP0S25 have been also enabled. Now again, you can enable multiple ports, like as I said, the HTTP, the HTTPS, but in my case I'm focusing only on these ports because later on I will use them. Now let's start. By doing this, we have set up our firewall for our server. Now let's start configuring our network configuration file. Again, it's worthwhile mentioning that what we will do now in the networking configuration, it is for the Ubuntu server version 18 or higher. It's not applicable for any Ubuntu server prior to 18. Before the 18, there was a file name interfaces. In the Ubuntu server 18, there is another file named network, and the process of configuring the network have become much more easier than the previous versions. So whatever networking configuration I will do here, it is only for the Ubuntu server 18 or higher. Now the networking file name is netplan. So we need to change the directory to go to this file. Now we need to remember a few things. This IP address 192.168.0.11/24. This is the DHCP IP address. We need to get a static IP address, not a dynamic HPC. So change directly etc/netplan. Let's see which files are available here. There's only one file by the name of 01-netconfig.yaml. Let's open this file. By default, you will find this file, only this thing. Now this is what we talked about earlier, DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol 4. By default, it is configured to yes. That's why the router giving this server a different IP address every time the server connects to the internet and to the router. That's why we need to make it false, so we can get a static IP address for the server. Now how we can get this? We just add addresses (192) if you remember, 168.0, you remember the IP address we just saw, then we give it 250. Now this is the subnet. Remember, or if you know that the subnet starts with 250, 250, 250, 250. So if you want a subnet, then you have to change this. If you want just a static IP address, then you get this one with 250. Then you slash with 24. This is the mask, this header mask. For the IPv4 it's 24, for the IPv6 it's 32. Now we have finished the addresses. We need to configure the gateway for it is 192.168.0-1. The gateway always starts with number 1. Now there is one thing it is worth mentioning. This number, it will be changeable. In my device it is 192.168.0, but in your device it depends on your router what will be the number. So this number is not a fixed number in my device, in your device, in other device. No, it's changeable. In my device this is the number, in your device could be another number, so you have to keep it in here with the 0, and then you just change this one to get your static IP address for your server. Now the gateway always starts with number 1. The other thing is optional, which is true. Then we add the name servers. The name servers will get addresses. Now in this case, the name servers addresses, I will use the same my upper addresses, which is 192.168.0.2, the gateway, only the gateway. Now the addresses here, the name servers especially, let me go for the search and then I talk to you about the addresses. Then search, I just keep it empty. For the addresses here, you know, when you sign up for your website or whatever in a shared server, usually that provider, that host, will give you a name servers. Or you can assign to yourself a name servers. You need to add these name servers in here. These name servers are compatible or equivalent to the name servers and the IP addresses which you can add in here, but in my case I will use the gateway as it is. Now once you have done that, you need to save your net plan configuration file and put them in action. Name servers, addresses, Control X, yes. You need to apply. So how you can do? Sudo net plan apply. Now your new networking configuration have been applied successfully, and let me show you the new static IP address. You remember here, this was one number that is changeable every time the server will connect to this router. Now after we have made our new networking net plan file, let's see the IP address. You can see here our new static IP address is 192.168.0.250. Now every time when your server connect to the router will get the same IP address. It will not be changed ever. Now this is the end of video number 3. In this video we have set up our server firewall and the server networking file. Thank you for watching.